Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. Welcome to Masjid New Africa's Sunday public address. Let us begin with the short prayer opening as we do customarily. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amin. That is to say, we seek refuge with God, Allah, from Satan, the rejected enemy. And we begin with God's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. All praises belong to God. He's the guardian, evolver, cherisher, sustainer, and nurturer of all of the systems of knowledge. The merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. You alone do we ask for help, and you alone do we seek. You alone do we seek your aid and ask for help. Show us the straight path, or guide us on the straight path, the path of those on whom you have bestowed your grace, those whose portion is not wrath, and those who go not astray. And we say to that, Amin. Again, we want to welcome you all to our Sunday public address. This is a special address that we felt the need to bring to the attention of the public, our community, and particularly parents as well as siblings. This message that we want to give today, and this message that we want to give today is concerning vaping by the use of underage children, adolescent, school-age children, and vaping. Before I begin, let me just give you a background information as to why this particular subject became so important for today. It was because over the last few weeks, I've had some parents come to me with some issues. Parents who didn't know each other, but separate issues involving school-age children vaping. When I say school-age children, I mean children ranging from the ages of 12 and 17. So not even just middle school children, but also elementary school children. And this issue of vaping. And some parents, grandparents, for that matter, may not know what it is, but it's our job to, one of what the purpose of our public address is to bring information to the people. And with the information, we hope to inspire the people and motivate the people to, to develop some method of change or do some things different, so that there's a different end result. So over the last few weeks, there's been some issues from concerned parents of their children vaping, getting caught at school with vapes, with vaping tools, vaping pens, or whatever the instrument is that they use. And what I come to find out is these parents that came to me, I end up, I got their permission and consent and asked them would they like to speak with another parent who had the same issue. And what we found out was that this problem or this concern was bigger than just what was happening in that particular household. You see how when we start to exchange information with each other, when there's a concern in the community, and we bring that concern out so that either we could get the right help, or we can put the right information out there to help somebody. This is what a collective community is all about. It's not about feeling ashamed or embarrassed because, I know that this is not something we teach our children to do. We do not teach them to become involved in stuff like this. However, unfortunately, it happens. But it doesn't mean it's the end of the world that it happens. What's most important when it does happen is that we become informed and we start to inform each other. And we start having these conversations as to how to recognize and prevent it from happening in the future. So with that being said, I have some, I wasn't sure if I could pull up some statistics on this site, but I'll just try to read them and give you a picture, create a picture in your mind as to how detrimental this idea, this practice, this recreational practice of vaping is serious. But first, I want to go back to something that I mentioned last week. Remember, if you were with us last week, I always like to use this board as a means of, because everybody does not learn the same way. Because I haven't always been a learner who can just sit and listen to a lecture and learn from that. I learned that some of my strengths in learning came from being able to see, being a visual learner, as well as an audio learner. So I'm aware of that. And this is why, you know, my practice, my habit of teaching is always involves, you know, I got to put some objects or words on the board so that we can actually see them. Perhaps they'll come across better to us or clear to us in our ability to understand. So I talked about last week analogy, this term analogy, using something usually in nature to describe something in the social context of human beings, all right? So the thing we use in nature in our theme is a garden. We talked about this garden, and in social relationships, this garden is related to people, or should I say humans. Now, the characteristics of a garden is very much like that of the human being, as far as how the garden has to develop and what we expect from the garden. The garden is a thing that is cared for, cultivated, cared for in a manner in which we want to get the best product from it. And the best product that comes from this garden is usually for something that we're going to consume, that we're going to put into our body, right? It's the same development and cultivation pretty much that takes place with the human being. And parents would know this more than anything in raising and developing and cultivating a human being, right? One of these things, or what is the same, or what I want to make a relationship, a connection with, if you will, is we know what to look for in the garden. We know what we're expecting to see in this garden. But what are some things, or what is something that we don't expect to see in the garden that we feel is an inhibitant to the garden? What is one of those things that we see? What you think it is, brother? What do we work in the garden so much to keep out of the garden?
Insects,
but more importantly,
weeds.
We may not understand why a person of horticulture, an expert in gardening, why weeds are something that is constantly being removed as they show up in the garden. The nature of weeds, or they call them evasive, weeds are evasive. You know what weeds do to the plant or the crop in a garden? Weeds have a tendency to steal. They take away from, and they create a situation that eventually starves out whatever is being grown in the garden. What I mean by starves out is the weeds have a tendency to utilize water, sunlight that is supposed to be for the plant or what is being grown in the garden, and it starves it out where it becomes deficient, and the weeds become more stronger, and they start to overpower or overgrow the product that we're trying to produce in this garden. Now, this is what the nature of weeds do. So they are like in competition with what's being grown in the garden. And these weeds starve out the nature, the plant, the product, the produce that is being produced in this garden. And you know, it's interesting that these invasive types of plants are called weeds. Now, there's another type of weed that we use in human slang. Now, the technical name for this is marijuana, but the common name for it is weed. Matter of fact, I think weed is more common than marijuana. You hear weed, you know exactly what context we're talking about when you hear weed. But this too does the same exact thing. It starves out this development of the human being, particularly the brain. The brain. It starves out nutrients. It starves out the development of the brain, and it kind of isolates it, and it stagnates the ability of the brain to function properly. That's why, you know, when you see people under the influence of the weed or the marijuana type plant, their movements are usually slow. Their reflexes are usually slow. And this is not something that is characteristic of the natural development of the human being. So I wanted to make that connection between this weed and that weed. Now, one thing about both of these, the garden and people, is they both start the same way. They both start as seeds. They both begin as seeds. You have a human seed, you have a plant seed, both seeds, and then the plant germinates, it splits and cracks, and it goes from one. And the cell bodies in the human being goes through the process of what we call meiosis. The cells begin to replicate each other and grow like that. Same process, same thing. You see what I'm saying? You see the similarity between nature and the social development of the physical and social development of the human being. These seeds have to be cultivated in an environment that's conducive for it to benefit. And if they're not, the seeds are going to be hampered. They're going to be defective. They're not going to flourish. They're not going to develop the way God intended for them to develop. So the weed becomes a detriment to the seed. The weed becomes a detriment to the seed. Now, let's get back to this vaping thing, because I know that there are some parents out there. I know there's some people out there concerned. And I'm under the impression now that if you have any school-age children between the ages of 12 and 17, if you have not had an experience with either them getting caught up with this vape stuff, then perhaps you may want to have a conversation with them, because I'm sure they can tell you that they have seen it in their environment, in their school environment. And this is the thing, it's more so popular among these young children in the school. And I'm like, okay, we need to bring this to the attention of the public. We need to talk about this. E-cigarettes, frequently used tobacco pens or products by most adolescents. They say the statistics state that there's 2.1 million underage children that's using e-cigarettes in some form or fashion. 2.1 million that's using them. And you know, the thing about kids, children, especially school-age children, the culture of children in schools. The culture of children in schools is, you know, when something like this is happening or become popular among the masses of children, they are least likely to tell their peer to don't do that. You know, I wouldn't do that. They're least likely to do that, as much as we would like to believe that they should say. You know, when I was in school, there were so many messages. There were a lot of messages when I was in school that deterred you from drug use. A lot of messages. It was a lot of, you know, we had the crime dog used to come, used to dressed up. We used to have drug awareness week where we would make posters and stuff like that. It was a real big thing. Just Say No. See, I was in school when the Just Say No campaign in the 80s was really popular, and it was popular in the schools. I've noticed that over the last 25, 30 years, the message of drugs in school has died off. It has died off. Even commercials, advertisement about drug use has died off. One of the most popular drug commercials I remember was the egg in the frying pan. Now you have to grow up in the 80s, to 80s and 90s to really the 80s to understand this commercial. They would have a picture of a skillet on the stove, empty skillet with fire going underneath it, and they say, "This is your brain." You remember that? And then they crack an egg. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? And that was it. That was the message. It was no other talking. There was nothing else to debate. There was nothing else to say, hey, this could be. The idea was that your brain, under the influence of drug, begins to fry and cook. It begins to, its development becomes inhibited. I don't think this message is loud and clear, or even being given to the extent that it came to us during that time period. And that to me bothers me, because there's not enough awareness of an awareness of drug campaign in the schools to give these younger children the courage to say, if they see a friend of theirs or somebody, one of their classmates with a drug or any type of drug paraphernalia, to say something about it. Even if it's not to administration, to say something to them and say, this is not right. Why are you doing this? Give them some word of advice. But 2.1 million middle school, high school students have been, it's been proposed that statistics show that they are using these vape pens, these e-cigarettes. Now, for those who don't know what a vape pen is, or know what vaping is, or know what dabbing is, these are the names that they come by, vaping or dabbing. But vaping is the process of inhaling and exhaling a vapor produced nicotine that's heated up. Now check this out. It's not like a regular cigarette. A regular cigarette just had, you have tobacco in it with some additives, right? With nicotine and stuff like that, on a piece of paper, rolled up in a piece of paper with a cotton filter at the end. Now, true enough, that's bad for you too, because when you think about how God created us, so masterfully in his mercy. He gave us a set of lungs, and the lungs is how we intake air and oxygen for life. And oxygen that we take in is taken in through the lungs and is processed and is sent to other parts of the body as deoxygenated blood. And this is how our brain functions. This is the lifeline of the human being. But he made these lungs for us to breathe in air, not smoke. The lungs were made to breathe in air. So when we breathe in, when we put something in the lungs other than air, we already compromising the beautiful human creation that God has designed for us already. Now, the process of vaping, to inhale and exhale a heated nicotine with the use of an instrument, not a cigarette as we know it, but a pen, a type of device. And I was looking at some of these devices. Some of them, you charge them, you can plug them into your computer. They have like a USB on the end of them. I'm like, this is fascinating. But something with this kind of exhaust or put out got to be detrimental, crazy detrimental. But they are electronic vape pens. You have electronic cigarettes, vape pens, personal vaporizing machines, all these things. And for those who don't know or may not know, the equivalent of inhaling one stroke of vaporized nicotine, they say it's like smoking 20 cigarettes. Like smoking 20 cigarettes. Now, if I think probably 20 come in one pack. Technology is a beautiful thing when we use it for our advantage, and when we use it to eliminate hardships of the human being. But at the opposite end, technology can be a detriment and a threat. to us as a society of human beings as we know it. To be able to consume 20 cigarettes in one stroke of a vape pen, if your health is not a priority in knowing this, then, you know, this instrument that God gave us as a body is not important enough for us to say, let me give it the best attention that I could possibly muster for it. Then we have a real serious issue going on. We got to start at another place other than just a vaping pen, other just than a vaping nicotine. But also in these vaping instruments is marijuana. Now, let me tell you some things about this vaping thing that I know, that I have come to know personally. This vaping thing is a very discreet practice, so you may not even know if your kid is using it. And I advise you that if you suspect anything, you're probably right. And you might want to start, you know, sometimes we give our children the freedom, being just the being free and trusting them, and it's all good. It's all good, but never neglect the fact that your child is a child. Your child is a child, and they know what you approve of and what you don't. So if they know you don't approve of something, they're going to go extra hard to try to hide it from you. But the thing with this vaping pen is you can vape and not have no smell. A kid can be right in his room playing the game, vaping, and you never know. And you come right in and say, hey, you need to pick them clothes up. You need to do this, and you'll never know. And signs to look out for is erratic behavior, instant behavior. This is what I'm learning over the last couple of weeks, because I had an experience with one of my children with this. And I'm saying this because I have to be open and upfront with you about what I experienced with him. And I started looking for signs and things that were different. I had a suspicion, but I wasn't really sure. And I, you know, like most of us, we give enough rope until there's something convincing comes along and lets us know. But no, we have to start paying attention to signs, and we have to get in mind what do this. My son, my daughter would never do this. The reality of it is they probably would in a day's time, because if we live in an information age, so information travels much faster than it did when I was growing up 30 years ago. They can get information about how good a thing is, or see YouTube, TikTok. Oh, it's so many things out there that can convince them to go ahead and do it. And it's videos, I'm sure, out there that show you how to do it and not get caught, right? What to do. But it's some things that I think you should look for as a parent. Look for mood swings, behavior changes, fingertips, dark lips, just unusual, uncharacteristic behavior of your child. Isolation. Want to be isolated. Disappearing, sudden disappearing and appearing, or wanting to go. This is one of the big things, and this is the one thing I learned as a parent too. We have to be very mindful of our children leaving our house and where they're going. It's okay to ask. I mean, we got phones now. You can track them. You can this and that. But be very aware of where they go, and even if they go into a person's house, a friend's house, be mindful of these friends. Be mindful of some of these family members, because you don't know what's going on in that house. You might not know what's happening in that environment. And I'm saying this to say, to put everybody on notice, that if we're going to begin to tackle this e-cigarette, vaping, dabbing issue, don't expect the companies who making millions of dollars off of this stuff. And I even looked up some of the marketing schemes. This stuff is directly marketed to attract children in some cases, the way they market it. Flavor, color, styles. These ain't for adults. These are for kids. These are old marketing strategies that always existed in the marketing arena. If you want to market something to a kid, to a parent, then do it through their children. Do it through the things that their children would like. So I'm saying that to say, as a community, us banding together and becoming, having conversations with other parents. If you are coaches and you coaching a team, There needs to be a conversation with your parents and with your players, because you'll be surprised. Even these players are doing this. And the last point I want to make about this vaping in regards to how it's detrimental to the health of our children. Last Monday night, or Monday night, I think it was, last Monday night, I believe the young man from the Buffalo Bills football team, Damar Hamlin, he made a play on the field as a defensive player. He made a tackle on the field, and as he made the play and stood up, he suddenly collapsed. And I'm sure everybody in America knows about this issue, because this has practically never happened before, right? And it had whether you were a sports fan or not, it had everybody on the edge of their seats concerned about the life of this young man. I know it had me, because I didn't even watch the game. I was teaching the class, and I happened to come in right when he made the tackle. I guess God, Allah, wanted me to see this. I came in the room. I hadn't seen none of the game. I came in the room just as he was making this play. And I saw the trainers run on the field, but I left the room. And when I came back, I looked at the TV and I saw the players had surrounded him, because I probably had left the room for maybe 10 minutes or so. And I said, what happened? I had to get the recap. This man died on the field. Had it not been for the first responders of his trainers acting the way that they did, perhaps we would not be having this conversation about, recognizing his life and really being thankful that he made it through that situation. But he died on the field. His heart stopped for whatever reason, and they were able to resuscitate him until they got medical staff in there, and then they got him to the hospital. And as they say, reports say, when he got to the hospital, his heart stopped again. They had to resuscitate him a second time. So he died twice. He died twice. And they was able to revive him and bring him back. My message to you young children out there, athletes or not, doctors say that his recovery, the majority, the benefit of his recovery weighed heavily upon the fact that he was in the best of shape. He was in the best of shape, tip-top shape as an athlete. And there were no toxicology reports came back said he was on any drugs or anything like that. He was in the best of shape. Yet still, he made a football play that football players make thousands of times in their life, from pee-wee to junior high, high school, college, and pro. Thousands of times they make the same play. Yet still, I'm sure Damar Hamlin made this play thousands of times in his life and didn't know that his life would leave him like that. If you are involved in any sports activities out there, and your children are, this is another reason why it's so important for you to sit down and have a conversation with them. Have a conversation with them. Because being active and participating in sports that gets your heart rate up like that, just imagine what the circumstances would have been like had he been under influence of any kind of substances. Just imagine what it could be like for your child who may be participating in this vape movement when they're on the field or on the court or on the baseball diamond. It could happen to them, and they may not be able to be revived as quick as Damar Hamlin was. So having these conversations with our children and having a conversation, I had to have a conversation with my son, not a shouting match or fussing at him and you know better and this and that. I felt that way, but that wasn't the way I came at him. We have to sit down and have conversations with them and let them know what our concerns are. Let them know what the detriments, the effects of that, what they're doing could be, or their friends could be. And hopefully it'll open up a door for conversation for them to have with us when they see it. because it matters. At the end of the day, it matters. And I don't want parents out there who may be faced with this or may have been faced with this issue, and it's still an ongoing problem. It may be an addiction that you may need to look into, because this is if you inhale one vape stroke, and that's like 20 cigarettes, and you've been doing it over a substantial amount of time, this could be easily addictive. So that may need to be other measures of help, and we need to actually follow through with that, getting them the help that they need, and not so much as just making it out to be their fault, and just criticizing them as parents. But we got to help them. So with that being said, I would say, if you're aware of this happening with young people in your family, young people that you know, bring it to the attention of parents. Let's talk about it. Let's become more open with it in the public, and perhaps we can help save our children, because these are the seeds that we're cultivating. We're responsible for cultivating. We're responsible for cultivating these seeds. And before I conclude, let me say this too. I got to say this. These children are not walking in these stores buying these vape pens. Somebody of age is supplying them with them. And I know this for a fact, because I've seen text messages and phones from children, and I've seen conversations. And this is a public service announcement. You don't want to be caught by no parent, especially me, giving an underage child something illegal, or selling an underage child something illegal. That's another issue, because the kids can't get it. They can't walk in the store and get it. Somebody is supplying them with it, and that has to stop too. So let us all be aware of what's happening. And like I say, it's worthy of having a conversation with everyone that our children frequent, the places that they go on, whether it's the school coaches, the teachers at the school, the extracurricular coaches, whatever it is. It needs to be a conversation that everybody is having, so that the children know we are aware of it, and they know we are aware of the signs and the symptoms. So with that being said, we pray that something was said of benefit that will help someone and help someone's children to be more aware and to make the right choice, to make the best decision, to not participate in this act of vaping, as it could cause catastrophic issues down the line with your body that we don't even know about yet. So with that being said, we pray that something of benefit was said here, and that Masjid New Africa Center for Human Development can be a place where you can become inspired, informed, and motivated all in one, with God's help. So with that, we'll conclude our program with let's end with a short dua, because I want a short dua, a short prayer.
Imam Tyerre?
Yes.
Imam Tyerre, you do
Yes.
have one question. It says,
okay, we have a question. Okay.
Yes, sir. The question is, why do you think this vaping has been targeted and marketed as much towards our youth?
Because the youth, why do I think it has been marketed towards the youth? When you look at statistics and how, first I would say this, two things. I think the youth are vulnerable, the most vulnerable people around. And however this vaping thing became trending or started, the fact of the matter is, it's happening in elementary schools as middle schools. And the growing popularity of it is when one is doing it, or one is doing it to show that it's something, I guess, hip, cool, whatever. When it becomes popular, it just becomes a trendsetter. It just sets in. Now, as far as vape companies, this is not me. This is statistics are showing that mass marketing is being done in a way that attracts young children, being that flavored or scented vape pens, colorful, even the convenient usage of them. Because I've seen a couple of different types of them, and they are very discreet. They're very easy to hide. So I think that the children are being targeted more so because they're vulnerable, and they, in today's world, they have a phone. They have access to getting money. It's so easy for a child to get money now because they just say, "Cash at me, mom." You don't have to go give them no physical money no more. So it's been made in every way possible convenient for young people to access money and then to communicate discreetly with the plug. That's what they call it, y'all. They call it the plug. I'm just be honest with you. The plug. That's the person who has access to the adult, the person who is of age that has access to deliver the pens or to get them to the child in one way or another. So I think that the children are severely, y'all youth are severely vulnerable, and they have access to get money. So we have to be mindful of that too. If you're just sending random money or just keeping money piled up on your kids' Cash App, go and monitor that too. Look at it. See where this money is going. See who they sending money to. Who are these people? You know, if it's not DoorDash, and another thing too is what I found that, and this is what I was told by a vape user, underage vape user. You ever heard of DoorDash? Some people use DoorDash to deliver food to them. I didn't know you can order stuff from a store. So you can order some products from a store online and have it DoorDashed and delivered to the house. Hey, I just learned this out recently, that these are some of the things that are happening, and this is how it's becoming so rampant among young people. So if they have access to it, and that's what I was saying, they're vulnerable and they have access. So I hope that was shed some light on it, on the question that was asked.
Yes,
Any
sir.
more?
Yeah, I'm sure it did. Thank you.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So if there's any more, is there any more questions, or anybody that can inform us, or a question that I couldn't ask? I can get more information and come back next week with the same topic, because it's not just a one and done type of topic. This is actually something that involves a campaign of awareness and just really informing people about what's going on here. Okay. So be mindful that, and I'll just say this in our conclusion, our closing, that every Sunday at 12:30 is our Sunday public address. The public is welcome. We are located in Hitchcock, Texas, at 7610 Highway 6. 12:30 is our Talim session. And for those of you who don't know, we have Friday Jumu'ah prayer. This is our formal prayer of the Muslims every Friday at 1:30. So we here Fridays at 1:30, or we here Friday we usually open up around 1 o'clock, but we also here for our public address live and in person at 12:30. And you're welcome to come and visit us. Bring visitors with you. If you have any inquiries about Islam and you just want information, or you want to know more about Al-Islam or who are the Muslims, please visit us. And we would also ask that if you want to contribute or donate to what we're doing here, if you want to support what we're doing here, you can always support us through our PayPal account, paypal.me/MasjidNewAfrica. And just look for our logo. And we also have a Cash App account, $ Masjid New Africa. And we are a 501c3 tax exempt organization. So, and if you want to mail in a check, we have people who also mail in checks. Any contribution that you can make towards what we're doing here would be greatly appreciated. Because the work that we do here, we don't, there's nobody here on the payroll. And your donations is how we survive, or how we're able to do what we do and bring you what we bring. As an announcement, I also want to let you all know too that tonight I'll be on a program discussing the trifecta of the Abrahamic religions. The trifecta of the Abrahamic religions. And I was invited by the host, Coco Roberts. Brother Coco interviewed a Christian and a Jew, someone of the Jewish faith and the Christian faith previously, and he's interviewing myself to get the Muslim or the Islamic perspective on the trifecta of the Abrahamic religions and how Islam is connected to Abraham as though the other monotheistic religions as well. So tune in at 6 p.m. We have a link. It'll be on our Facebook page. You can click the link and you can observe the program through that Facebook channel, God willing. Okay, so with that, let us conclude with dua, prayer. We say, our Lord, we cannot manage this life ourselves without you. Please make of our lives what you want it to be, what you prefer it to be. Do not allow us to act on our own accord. Bless us to act only in obedience to your will. We hear and we obey. Forgive us. We beg your forgiveness. Amin. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. Thank you again for attending Masjid New Africa's public address.